I'm Megan Carter, CEO of Blue Horizon Capital, one of Miami's fastest-growing investment firms. Every weekday, my driver picked me up from my waterfront condo in Brickell and drove me to our headquarters overlooking Biscayne Bay. For weeks, everything seemed normal. Well, almost. My driver, Ethan Brooks, always had his girlfriend riding shotgun. Since her office in downtown Miami was supposedly on the way, I never complained. It wasn't worth arguing over a 10-minute detour. Until the morning everything changed. I opened the rear passenger door of my black Rolls-Royce Ghost and immediately noticed a bright pink sticky note placed neatly on my usual seat. No freeloaders allowed. I peeled it off slowly, convinced it had to be some kind of joke. What exactly is this? I asked. Before Ethan could answer, the woman sitting in the front passenger seat spun around. Her name was Ashley Monroe. She folded her arms and looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her designer heels. "Can't you read?" she snapped. "Every single day you mooch rides from my boyfriend. Don't you have any dignity?" I stared at her in complete disbelief. "If you can't afford your own Uber, maybe you shouldn't be working downtown." She laughed. "I swear, people like you are unbelievable." For several seconds I couldn't even process what I'd just heard. Then Ethan hurried over, lowering his voice so Ashley couldn't hear. "Miss Carter, please don't be upset. What is going on?" He rubbed the back of his neck nervously. "Ashley doesn't know I'm a chauffeur." I blinked. "What?" "She's a little possessive. I told her I work for an investment company, but I never explained exactly what I do." He swallowed. "She thinks I'm an executive." I kept staring at him. So instead of telling her the truth, he nodded awkwardly. I just let her believe it. Ashley interrupted from inside the car. "Ethan, are we leaving or not?" He looked back at me apologetically. "She isn't comfortable riding with you anymore." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "I'll take Ashley to work first." He hesitated. "Then I'll come back and pick you up." For a second I honestly wondered if I'd misheard him. He climbed behind the wheel, started my Rolls-Royce, and drove away, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk outside my own building. I watched the taillights disappear around the corner. Then I calmly unlocked my phone. I dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "My vehicle has just been taken without my permission." The dispatcher paused. "Can you describe the vehicle?" "Black Rolls-Royce Ghost." "And who took it?" "My employee." "Your employee?" "Yes. And he left with another woman after refusing to let me into my own car." There was silence. I'd like to report it as unauthorized use of my vehicle. About 25 minutes later, 2 Miami police cruisers pulled up outside my building. The officers had barely stepped onto the sidewalk before my Rolls-Royce came flying around the corner. Ethan slammed on the brakes and jumped out, looking completely terrified. "Miss Carter." He looked from me to the officers, then back to me. "What happened?" One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, are you Ethan Brooks?" "Yes." "Miss Carter reported that you drove away in her vehicle without authorization." His face instantly lost every trace of color. "No, officer. This is just a misunderstanding." He raised both hands. "I'm her driver. I drive this car every day. I only dropped someone off. It took a little longer than expected. I brought the car right back." The officers turned toward me. "Ma'am, would you like to press charges?" Before I could answer, Ethan leaned closer. His voice became desperate. "Please don't. My father worked for you." The words stopped me. His father, Robert Brooks, had been my chauffeur for nearly 7 years before retiring because of serious heart problems. Reliable. Professional. Always early. Never once had he given me a reason to question his integrity. 3 months earlier, Robert had come into my office one final time before retirement. He'd asked me for only one favor. "My son just lost his job," he'd said quietly. "If there's any opening, could you please give him a chance?" Because of Robert. I did. And now, standing outside my condo, watching his son beg the police not to arrest him, I realized I might have made the biggest hiring mistake of my career. In the end, I let out a slow breath. Forget it. I told the officers. I'm not pressing charges today. Ethan looked like he'd just been handed a second chance at life. Thank you, Miss Carter. Thank you, I promise this will never happen again. The officers left after confirming that no further action was needed. Ethan thanked me at least a dozen more times before opening the rear door for me. The ride to the office was unusually quiet. Neither of us spoke. For the next couple of weeks, things actually improved. Ashley disappeared. The passenger seat stayed empty. The Rolls-Royce was spotless every morning, and Ethan acted like the perfect employee. I started believing maybe he'd finally understood how close he'd come to losing everything. Then the excuses began. Sorry I'm late, Miss Carter. There was an accident on I-95. The next morning, my alarm didn't go off. 2 days later, a water pipe burst in my apartment. There was construction near Brickell. Every day came with a different explanation. None of them sounded convincing. Still, I chose to let it go. My schedule was packed with mergers, investor meetings, and board presentations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Babysitting my driver wasn't exactly at the top of my priority list. One Saturday morning I decided to spend the weekend at my waterfront villa on Palm Island. The property was my escape from the city. No meetings. No conference calls. Just ocean views and complete silence. I called Ethan. Where are you? There was a brief pause. Good morning, Ms. Carter. I need you to bring the car around. Another pause. I'm really sorry. My rear tire went flat this morning. I'm waiting at a repair shop. The mechanic says they won't finish until tomorrow. His answer came a little too quickly. Almost rehearsed. If you'd like, he continued, I can order you an Uber. I frowned. No, that's fine. I'll find my own transportation. After hanging up, I booked a luxury ride through an app and headed toward Palm Island. 45 minutes later, the driver pulled up outside my gate. I stepped out and froze. Parked directly in front of my villa was my black Rolls-Royce Ghost. Perfectly clean. Perfectly intact. No flat tire. No repair shop. No mechanic. Just my car. Exactly where it wasn't supposed to be. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I walked toward the front entrance. The front door wasn't locked. It was slightly open. I pushed it gently. The moment the door swung inward, my jaw tightened. The living room looked like the aftermath of a fraternity party. Designer furniture was covered with food wrappers. Champagne bottles littered the marble floor. Beer cans overflowed from crystal bowls that had once held fresh orchids. Cigarette ashes covered my white Italian rug. Someone had actually stubbed out cigarettes on my leather sectional. The air smelled like alcohol, perfume, and smoke. My heart started pounding. Then I heard laughter. A loud group of people was gathered around the oceanfront lounge area. Sitting in the center, like she owned the place, was Ashley. Around her sat nearly a dozen friends. One of the women laughed. Ashley, you're seriously living the dream. I still can't believe your boyfriend owns this place. Another chimed in. And that Rolls-Royce? Oh my God. I'd never stop posting pictures if I had a boyfriend like Ethan. Ashley smiled proudly. He works hard. Someone raised a champagne glass. To Miami's newest power couple. Everyone cheered. I stood there silently. Then Ashley noticed me. The smile vanished from her face. She stood up. Slowly walked toward me. Her designer heels clicked across my marble floor. She stopped inches away. Looked me up and down. Without warning. Slap. Her hand crashed across my face. The room went completely silent. You've got some nerve, she hissed. So now you're following my boyfriend home? My cheek burned. Ich zerrte her. What did you just say? Ashley folded her arms. I've seen desperate women before. But this is pathetic. She pointed toward the driveway. You've been riding in Ethan's Rolls every day. Now you've tracked him all the way to his house. One of her friends laughed. I told you she'd show up eventually. Ashley smirked. I knew she was obsessed with him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan told you this house belongs to him? Ashley laughed out loud. Obviously. He's the CEO of Blue Horizon Capital. She looked at me with pure disgust. And you're just one of his employees. Everything suddenly made sense. The strange looks. The insults. The sticky note. The disinfectant she used to spray after I got out of the car. The disposable seat covers she'd placed on my seat. She believed Ethan owned everything. The company. The Rolls-Royce. The villa. And in her mind, I was just another employee shamelessly chasing her wealthy boyfriend. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the situation was so absurd that my brain struggled to accept it. So, I asked calmly, Ethan told you he's the CEO? Ashley crossed her arms. That's right. And what are you supposed to be? I smiled slightly. My boss's biggest fan? Her friends burst into laughter. One of them pointed at me. She seriously thought she had a chance. Another shook her head. You should really have some self-respect. Ashley took another step closer. Ethan only gives you rides because you work for him. He's too nice. Don't mistake kindness for interest. I looked around my own living room. Empty champagne bottles. Food all over the marble countertops. Burn marks on furniture worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Designer artwork hanging crooked on the walls. Everywhere I looked, someone had treated my home like a nightclub. My patience disappeared. You have exactly 5 minutes, I said calmly. To leave. Ashley blinked. What? I said leave. Take your friends. Get out. The room exploded with laughter. Ashley actually clapped. Oh my God. Listen to her. She's trying to kick me out of my own house. One of her friends laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Ashley looked at me with open pity. You really are delusional. She turned toward everyone. Guys, this woman actually thinks she owns Ethan's villa. More laughter. Someone pulled out a phone and started recording. Ashley loved having an audience. She walked closer until we were only inches apart. You know what your problem is? She smiled. You've convinced yourself that if you follow a successful man around long enough, he'll eventually notice you. I stared directly into her eyes. No. My problem is that you're standing inside my house. For the first time, Ashley hesitated. Only for a second. Then she laughed again. Ethan warned me you were obsessed. He said you couldn't accept that he already had someone. He told me you'd probably make up stories one day. So congratulations. You've officially embarrassed yourself. I slowly reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I opened my contacts. Then selected legal department. Ashley noticed. Oh, calling your manager? No. My attorneys. Before I could press call, Ashley stepped forward and snatched the phone from my hand. What are you doing? She looked at the screen. Then laughed. Attorneys. She rolled her eyes dramatically. You've watched too many TV shows. Without another word, she threw my phone across the room. It slammed against the marble fireplace. The screen shattered instantly. Everyone laughed. Nobody thought she'd gone too far. Instead, they applauded. One woman even shouted, "Nice shot." I looked at the broken phone, then back at Ashley. She smiled triumphantly. What now? As I bent to pick up the damaged phone, Ashley's eyes landed on the necklace around my neck. It was a simple glass pendant hanging from a delicate white gold chain. Inside the glass rested several small green jade fragments. Her smile widened. That's pretty. She reached toward it. I immediately stepped back. Don't touch it. She ignored me. Her fingers wrapped around the pendant. I grabbed her wrist. Let go. Ashley smirked. What? Afraid I'll find out it's fake? It isn't about the value. It belongs to my mother. She tilted her head. Oh, so that's the story now? My grip tightened. Take your hand off it. Instead, she yanked the chain with all her strength. The clasp snapped. The pendant landed in her hand. For the first time since I'd entered the villa, I felt genuine fear. Give it back. Ashley examined it under the light. It actually looks expensive. One of her friends leaned closer. Real jade. I took a careful step forward. It isn't the money. It has sentimental value. My mother left it to me. Ashley smiled. Even better. She dangled it just beyond my reach. You want it? I nodded once. Please. That single word surprised even me. Because I never begged. Not investors. Not competitors. Not anyone. But that pendant contained the only remaining pieces of the jade charm my mother had carried up a mountain decades earlier, while praying for my survival. It was the last physical connection I had to her. Ashley looked into my eyes. Her smile disappeared. Too bad. She swung her arm downward. Crack. The glass medallion exploded against the marble floor. Tiny shards scattered in every direction. The jade fragments bounced across the white stone like drops of green rain. Everything around me seemed to stop. The conversations. The music. Even my breathing. I slowly knelt to the floor, carefully reaching toward the broken jade pieces. My hands trembled. Behind me, Ashley laughed. I guess it wasn't that lucky after all. For several long seconds, I simply stared at the shattered jade scattered across the marble floor. The tiny green fragments reflected the afternoon sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay. It felt as though someone had reached into my chest and ripped out the last piece of my mother that I still carried with me. I closed my eyes. Slowly, carefully, I picked up the first fragment. Then another. My hands shook. Behind me, Ashley rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. It's just a necklace. One of her friends laughed. She's acting like someone died. I stood, still holding the broken pieces in my palm. When I looked at Ashley again, something inside me had changed. The anger was gone. So was the shock. All that remained was absolute certainty. You've made the biggest mistake of your life. Ashley smirked. Really? She stepped closer. What exactly are you going to do? I didn't answer. Instead, I slapped her. Crack. The sound echoed across the entire living room. Ashley stumbled backward, clutching her cheek. For a moment, nobody moved. Then she screamed. You little. Her voice cracked with rage. Get her. She pointed directly at me. I want her taught a lesson. Her friends didn't hesitate. Fix. Maybe 7 people rushed toward me at once. Someone shoved me from behind. Another grabbed my arm. A woman yanked my hair. A man kicked the back of my leg, sending me crashing onto the marble floor. Pain exploded through my wrist as I tried to catch myself. Before I could stand, another kick landed against my ribs. Someone else struck my shoulder. Voices blended together. Who do you think you are? You hit Ashley. She's dating Miami's youngest CEO. You've completely lost your mind. I curled my arms around myself, trying to protect my head while blows rained down from every direction. Ashley walked forward slowly. She crouched beside me, grabbed a fistful of my hair, then forced my face upward. Her lipstick was smeared. A red handprint had already formed across her cheek. She smiled. You said I'd regret this. She leaned closer. I've never regretted anything in my life. Her friends laughed. She tightened her grip on my hair. So, go ahead. Show me what someone like you can possibly do. I looked straight into her eyes. You'll find out. She laughed louder. The entire room joined in. No one noticed the distant sound outside. At first, it was only one engine. Then another. Then another. The unmistakable growl of several luxury SUVs turning onto the private driveway. One by one, the vehicles came to a stop outside the villa. Car doors opened almost simultaneously. Heavy footsteps approached the entrance. Ashley frowned. What now? One of her friends peeked through the window. I think someone's here. Ashley barely looked. They're probably Ethan's business partners. She smiled confidently. Perfect. They can watch. The front door swung open. The room fell silent. A tall man in a dark tailored suit entered first. His name was Daniel Reyes, head of executive security at Blue Horizon Capital. He had spent nearly 20 years protecting executives, diplomats, and Fortune 500 CEOs. He scanned the room once. His eyes immediately found me on the floor. Then they shifted to Ashley's hand tangled in my hair. His expression didn't change. Behind him came 4 members of my executive security team. Then 2 attorneys from Blue Horizon's legal department. Behind them, 2 senior vice presidents from the company. Finally, several additional security officers spread quietly throughout the villa. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody panicked. They simply secured every exit. Daniel walked directly toward me. His polished shoes stopped inches away. Without taking his eyes off Ashley, he spoke calmly. "Mang, are you injured?" Ashley finally released my hair. I accepted Daniel's hand and slowly stood. Every muscle in my body hurt. My wrist throbbed. My ribs burned every time I breathed. But I stood perfectly straight. I brushed a strand of hair away from my face. Then looked toward my legal team. "Photograph everything." My attorney nodded immediately. The furniture. The broken glass. The cigarette burns. The damaged artwork. The jade fragments. The injuries. Everything. Cameras appeared almost instantly. Photos began documenting every inch of the room. Ashley's confidence started to fade. She looked around nervously. Who are these people?" Nobody answered. One of her friends quietly lowered the phone she'd been using to record. Another slowly placed her champagne glass onto the table. A third took an unconscious step toward the wall. The atmosphere inside the villa had completely changed. 5 minutes earlier, they believed they were untouchable. Now, not a single person was smiling. The silence lasted less than a minute. Then the front door opened again. Someone hurried inside carrying a small white paper bag. "Ethan," Ashley called, relief flooding her voice. He walked into the living room wearing a smile that disappeared almost instantly. His eyes swept across the room. The legal team. The security officers. Daniel Reyes. The damaged furniture. And me. Standing calmly in the center of the room. The paper bag slipped from his hand. It hit the floor. A box of gourmet pastries rolled across the marble tiles before stopping beside a broken piece of jade. His face turned completely white. "Miss Carter." His voice barely existed. Ashley hurried over to him. "Ethan." Perfect timing. She grabbed his arm confidently. "This crazy woman showed up pretending she owns your house. Can you please explain everything?" He didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on me. Ashley frowned. "Ethan." He still said nothing. She laughed nervously. "Come on. Tell them. Tell them this is your villa. You own Blue Horizon Capital. Tell them she's just an employee." The room remained perfectly quiet. I looked directly at Ethan. "Ethan." My voice was calm. "Tell everyone." He swallowed. His hands began shaking. Ashley squeezed his arm. "Say something." "Nothing." "Ethan." This time my tone left no room for delay. "Who owns this house?" His breathing became uneven. Ashley looked from him to me, then back again. "Ethan." Finally, he lowered his head. His shoulders sagged. "She does." Ashley's smile disappeared. "What?" "The villa." He spoke so quietly that everyone leaned forward to hear him. "Belongs to Ms. Carter." Ashley blinked. "I don't understand." He closed his eyes. "The Rolls-Royce is hers. The company is hers. I don't own Blue Horizon Capital. I'm not the CEO. I'm..." His voice cracked. "I'm her driver." Silence. Absolute silence. Ashley stared at him as though she'd never seen him before. "What did you just say?" He couldn't even look at her. "I'm employed by Ms. Carter. I drive her to work. That's all." One of Ashley's friends gasped. Another whispered, "Oh my God." The woman who had been recording slowly lowered her phone. Someone else quietly backed toward the front door. Ashley's face had gone completely pale. No. She shook her head. No. You're lying. Ethan. Tell them you're joking. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me. Tears had begun forming in his eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Instead, I asked one simple question. How long? He frowned. What? How long have you been bringing Ashley here? He hesitated. About 7 weeks. And during those 7 weeks, I slowly looked around the destroyed villa. You let her believe everything here belonged to you. Yes. You let her insult me. Yes. You let her ride in my car. Yes. You allowed parties inside my home. His voice became almost inaudible. Yes. You watched while she destroyed property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yes. And you stood there. I opened my hand, revealing the shattered jade fragments, while she destroyed the last thing my mother ever gave me. Ethan broke. I'm sorry. I never thought. No. I interrupted. You never bothered to think. He lowered his head even further. Around us, Ashley's friends were quietly distancing themselves. One woman slipped her purse onto her shoulder. Another casually moved toward the hallway, pretending she wasn't involved. The confidence that had filled the room only minutes earlier had completely vanished. Ashley finally found her voice. She pointed at Ethan. You lied to me? He remained silent. You told me you were the CEO. Silence. You told me this house was yours. Still nothing. You told me that woman worked for you. He whispered. I know. Ashley took several slow steps backward. Her breathing became shallow. I didn't know. She looked at me desperately. I swear. I didn't know. I met her eyes. No. You didn't know who I was. I paused. But you knew exactly who you were. Nobody said another word. The only sounds left in the villa were camera shutters from my legal team documenting every damaged surface. Ashley slowly looked around the room. For the first time since I'd arrived, she realized nobody was standing beside her anymore. Her friends had quietly drifted away. The same people who had laughed while I was on the floor were now avoiding eye contact. Daniel Reyes turned toward the security team. Secure the property. Nobody leaves until the police arrive. Ashley immediately panicked. The police. She forced a laugh. Come on. This is ridiculous. It was just a misunderstanding. One of my attorneys, Sophia Bennett, stepped forward carrying a leather folder. Actually, she said calmly, this is far more than a misunderstanding. She began listing everything in an almost emotionless voice. Unauthorized occupation of private property. Intentional destruction of property. Assault. Battery. Vandalism. Unauthorized use of a company vehicle. Fraudulent misrepresentation. She closed the folder. And that's only what we've confirmed in the last 10 minutes. Ashley swallowed. I didn't know the house wasn't Ethan's. Sophia looked at her. Did you know you slapped someone? Ashley froze. Yes. Did you encourage several people to attack her? Silence. You instructed your friends to beat Miss Carter. Ashley looked around desperately. Nobody answered for her. Sophia continued. Whether you knew who owned the house is legally irrelevant. You knowingly committed the rest. Ashley's face lost even more color. One of her friends suddenly spoke. She told us it was Ethan's place. Another immediately pointed toward Ashley. Yeah. We only came because she invited us. A third joined in. I didn't break anything. I was just standing here. Within seconds, everyone began distancing themselves. I never hit anybody. I only watched. I didn't touch the furniture. I wasn't involved. Ashley stared at them in disbelief. What are you doing? You were all here. Nobody looked at her. Daniel nodded toward one of the security officers. Collect everyone's identification. No one argued. One after another. Driver's licenses were handed over. Another attorney quietly photographed each person before returning the IDs. Ashley looked horrified. Why are you taking pictures? For documentation. Sophia answered without looking up. Every individual present during the assault will be identified. Ashley's breathing quickened. The distant sound of sirens echoed through Palm Island. Blue and red lights flashed through the front windows. Within moments, several Miami Police Department vehicles pulled into the driveway. Ashley whispered, "Oh no." The front door opened once again. Uniformed officers entered the villa. The lead detective took one look around. Destroyed furniture. Broken glass. Alcohol everywhere. People standing silently against the walls. Then his eyes landed on me. "Ms. Carter." "Yes." "Are you injured?" "My attorney will provide my statement." He nodded professionally. Sophia handed him a prepared packet. Inside you'll find photographs, preliminary damage estimates, security personnel statements, and ownership documentation for the property and vehicle. The detective looked impressed. "You work fast." "We try." Meanwhile, another officer walked toward Ashley. "Mom, I'm going to need you to come with me while we take your statement." Ashley immediately pointed at Ethan. "He lied to me. He told me everything belonged to him." The detective nodded. "We'll certainly speak with him. But first..." He looked directly at her. "Did you strike Miss Carter?" Ashley hesitated. "Yes." "Did you remove and destroy her necklace?" Silence. The detective waited. Finally, "Yes." "Were you present while several people physically assaulted her?" Ashley looked down. "Yes." The detective made a note. "Thank you." She suddenly realized what she'd admitted. "Wait. I didn't mean." But it was too late. Everything had already been recorded. The interviews lasted for nearly 2 hours. One by one, every person who had been inside the villa gave a statement. And just as I'd expected, their stories started changing almost immediately. It wasn't my idea. I didn't know whose house it was. I only came for an hour. I never touched Miss Carter. I tried to stop everyone. Security footage would later prove that nearly every one of those statements was false. My attorneys simply watched in silence. Every lie made their job easier. While officers were still taking statements inside, I stepped onto the terrace overlooking Biscayne Bay. The evening breeze felt cool against my bruised face. A few minutes later, I heard slow footsteps behind me. "Ethan." I didn't turn around. "I know." He stopped several feet away. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally he said quietly, "I am sorry." I know saying it doesn't change anything. It doesn't. His shoulders slumped. I never meant for any of this to happen. I looked out across the water. "No. You never meant for Ashley to believe you own my company?" Silence. "You never meant for her to think the Rolls-Royce belonged to you?" "Nothing." "You never meant to give her keys to my villa?" His head lowered even farther. I just wanted her to think I was successful." "You wanted her to admire you?" "Yes." "So you borrowed my life." He closed his eyes. "I guess I did." I finally turned toward him. "You didn't borrow my life. You stole it." Every word landed like a hammer. "You stole my reputation. You stole my property. You stole my trust. And because you were too afraid to tell the truth." I slowly opened my hand. The broken jade fragments rested quietly in my palm. "This happened." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. My father would be ashamed of me." At the mention of Robert, I felt something tighten inside me. His father had spent years earning my trust. Ethan had destroyed it in less than 3 months. "My father asked me to give you a chance. I remember. I gave you one. You threw it away." Then I paused. "No. I gave you 2. The first was when I hired you. The second was the day I didn't press charges after you drove away in my car." He couldn't look at me anymore. "I know. You used your father's name to earn that second chance." I took one slow step closer. "And then you went right back to lying." His voice broke. I didn't think everything would spiral like this. You never expected to get caught. He said nothing. Because we both knew it was true. Daniel stepped onto the terrace. Mom. The detectives are ready. I nodded. Thank you. As I started walking back inside, Ethan spoke one last time. Please. My father is still recovering. If he hears about this, he'll be devastated. I stopped. Without turning around, I answered quietly. Your father spent 7 years building an honest reputation. You destroyed yours in 7 weeks. The consequences belong to you. Not him. And certainly not me. I walked back into the villa without looking back. For Ethan Brooks, everything was only just beginning. An ambulance was already waiting outside by the time the officers finished collecting statements. One of the paramedics approached me with a medical kit. Ms. Carter, I'd like to examine your wrist. I nodded. Only now, with the adrenaline beginning to wear off, did I realize how much everything hurt. My right wrist had swollen noticeably. Every deep breath sent a sharp pain through my ribs. The left side of my jaw throbbed where Ashley had slapped me. The paramedic gently examined my arm. I think you may have a serious sprain. He looked up. I'd recommend going to the hospital. Daniel stepped closer. I'll drive. 40 minutes later, I was sitting in a private examination room at Mount Sinai Medical Center. X-rays confirmed what I'd suspected. No broken bones. But my wrist was badly sprained. 2 ribs were badly bruised. There were multiple contusions across my shoulders and arms. The physician carefully documented every injury. My attorney, Sophia, quietly accepted copies of every medical report. They'll become part of the case, she explained. I simply nodded. When the nurse left the room, I finally opened my hand. The broken jade fragments were still there. Daniel looked down at them. I'm sorry, Mom. So am I. For several minutes neither of us spoke. I carefully placed each tiny piece into a clear evidence envelope provided by the detectives. They weren't valuable because of money. They were valuable because they were all I had left. Late that evening my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I answered. Ms. Carter. The voice sounded older. Weak. Speaking. This is Robert Brooks. I closed my eyes. Ethan's father. I heard what happened. His voice trembled. I came as soon as I could. 20 minutes later, Robert slowly entered the hospital room with the help of a cane. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him. His illness had taken a visible toll. He stopped beside my bed. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. Then unexpectedly, he bowed his head. I'm ashamed. You have nothing to apologize for. Yes. Ido. He looked directly into my eyes. I asked you to hire my son. I believed I'd raised him better. I shook my head. You asked for an opportunity. What Ethan did after receiving it was his decision. Robert's eyes filled with tears. I spent 7 years trying to earn your trust. And he destroyed it. No. I answered quietly. He destroyed his. Not yours. He looked surprised. I still remember every morning you arrived 10 minutes early. I remember how you refused holiday bonuses unless I insisted. I remember that you treated every company vehicle as if it belonged to your own family. I smiled sadly. You built your reputation through years of honesty. Your son's choices don't erase that. Robert lowered his head again. Thank you. He looked toward the evidence envelope on the bedside table. The necklace. I'm so sorry. I carefully picked it up. Inside, dozens of tiny jade fragments rested beneath the clear plastic. My mother carried the original pendant for decades. I said softly. When I was a little girl, she believed it protected me. Robert nodded respectfully. I know what it's like to lose the last thing someone leaves behind. Neither of us spoke after that. Sometimes, silence says everything. Before leaving, Robert slowly stood with the help of his cane. If there's anything I can ever do. I gently interrupted him. There is. He looked at me. Focus on getting better. You've already spent enough of your life worrying about everyone else. A faint smile crossed his face. For the first time that evening, it looked genuine. Then he quietly walked out of the room. I watched the door close. And for the first time since Ashley had smashed the pendant, I allowed myself to cry. 3 days later, I returned to headquarters. Blue Horizon Capital occupied the top 12 floors of a glass tower overlooking Biscayne Bay. Normally, the lobby buzzed with conversations, ringing phones, and executives rushing between meetings. That morning, it was almost silent. News had already spread throughout the company. Employees stopped talking as I walked through the lobby. Several quietly wished me well. Others simply nodded with genuine concern. No one mentioned Ethan. No one had to. By the time I reached the executive floor, Sophia was already waiting outside my office. She carried 2 thick folders. "The criminal investigation has officially begun," she said. "And the civil case?" She handed me the second folder. "We're ready to file." I stepped into my office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire Miami skyline. Usually, I loved that view. Today, I barely noticed it. Sophia placed the folders on my desk. "We've completed the preliminary damage assessment." She opened the first file. The property damage alone exceeds $600,000. I wasn't surprised. The leather sectional cannot be restored. The imported Italian rug must be replaced. Several custom furniture pieces were permanently damaged by cigarette burns. She turned another page. The surveillance system captured everything. Every minute. She nodded. From the moment you entered the villa. The slap. The destruction of the pendant. The assault. Everything. I quietly closed my eyes. There would be no arguing with video evidence. Sophia continued. The Rolls-Royce's onboard cameras also recorded several previous weekends. I looked up. Previous weekends? Yes. She slid several printed photographs across my desk. Ashley, laughing in the driver's seat. Her friends posing beside my car. Champagne glasses balanced on the hood. Selfies taken inside the villa. Dozens of them. So Ethan had been bringing them there for weeks. For almost 2 months. She handed me another document. We also recovered public social media posts. Ashley hadn't exactly been discreet. One photo showed her standing beside the pool. Caption: "Weekend at our waterfront estate. Hard work pays off." Another showed her inside the Rolls-Royce. "My man knows how to treat his queen." Another: standing in my kitchen, holding a glass of champagne. "CO, life isn't so bad." I slowly placed the photographs back on the desk. Every lie had been documented by the people telling it. Sophia gave a small smile. Sometimes the strongest evidence comes from the defendants themselves. I almost smiled back. "Anything else?" She nodded. "Ethan has officially been terminated." I simply said, "I expected that." The board voted unanimously. There had never really been another outcome. She opened the second folder. "We're seeking damages for assault. Property destruction. Unauthorized use of corporate assets. Fraudulent misrepresentation. And trespassing." She paused before adding, "and intentional destruction of an irreplaceable family heirloom." I looked toward the evidence box sitting on the corner of my desk. Inside rested the broken jade fragments. No amount of money would ever restore them. Sophia seemed to read my thoughts. The court understands that. This isn't about replacing it. It's about recognizing that some losses can never truly be repaired. I nodded slowly. Outside my office window, the waters of Biscayne Bay shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. For the first time since all of this began, I realized something. Ashley hadn't destroyed my future. Ethan hadn't destroyed my career. They had only exposed themselves. And now, they would have to live with the consequences. Within 48 hours, the story had exploded across Miami, then across Florida, then nationwide. Every major business outlet carried some version of the same headline. Driver pretends to be CEO. Girlfriend assaults the real executive. The internet couldn't get enough of it. Television stations replayed surveillance stills. News websites published timelines of the deception. Social media detectives uncovered months of Ashley's posts pretending to live a billionaire lifestyle. Ironically, she had documented nearly every lie herself. Blue Horizon Capital released an official statement that Friday morning. It was brief, professional, entirely factual. Blue Horizon Capital confirms that former employee Ethan Brooks has been terminated following an internal investigation into unauthorized use of company property, misrepresentation of his position within the organization, and actions resulting in ongoing criminal and civil proceedings. The statement continued. CEO Megan Carter was assaulted after discovering unauthorized occupants inside her private residence. The incident resulted in documented injuries and significant property damage, including the destruction of a personal family heirloom. No exageración. No emotional language. Just facts. Sometimes, facts are more devastating than accusations. By noon, Ashley's employer had issued a statement of its own. She had worked for a boutique luxury fashion brand in Miami's design district. The company announced that Ashley Monroe was no longer employed there. They declined further comment. Within hours, recruiters, clients, and former co-workers had already seen the headlines. The internet rarely forgets. Ethan disappeared from public view. His social media accounts were deleted. LinkedIn vanished. Every professional profile connected to his name went offline. It didn't matter. Copies already existed. The internet archives everything. Ashley took a different approach. 3 days after the news broke, she uploaded a 7-minute apology video. She sat in front of a white wall wearing almost no makeup. Halfway through the video, she began crying. I was manipulated. I believed everything Ethan told me. I honestly thought he owned the company. I never intended for anyone to get hurt. Millions watched it. Almost as many noticed what she never mentioned. She never apologized for slapping me. She never apologized for ordering her friends to attack me. She never apologized for smashing my mother's pendant. She never acknowledged spending weeks enjoying a mansion she believed belonged to someone else. Most importantly, she never accepted responsibility. Instead, she blamed Ethan. Sophia watched the video before forwarding it to me. I thought you should see this. I watched the entire thing once, then quietly closed my laptop. What do you think? She asked. I looked out the office window. I think she's sorry she got caught. Sophia nodded. That's my impression too. Our communications team issued only one response. 3 sentences. Nothing more. All available security footage has been provided to law enforcement. Evidence related to the incident remains part of active legal proceedings. We will not comment further while the investigation continues. That statement spread almost as quickly as Ashley's video. Unlike hers, it didn't invite debate. Meanwhile, investigators continued building the case. Villa security footage, vehicle cameras, medical records, witness statements, social media posts, phone records, photographs. Every new piece of evidence strengthened the prosecution. The detectives later told Sophia something interesting. Cases like this often become difficult because witnesses change their stories. This one was different. The defendants had spent weeks creating evidence against themselves. Every luxury dinner, every pool party, every selfie inside my home, every photo inside my Rolls-Royce, every post claiming Ethan was a billionaire CEO. Every lie had been preserved online. Nothing disappeared. Nothing could be explained away. And with every passing day, the truth became harder for anyone to deny. 6 months later, the civil trial finally began. The courthouse in downtown Miami was surrounded by reporters before sunrise. News vans lined the street. Camera crews waited near the entrance. None of that interested me. I wasn't there for publicity. I was there because some actions deserve consequences. Daniel met me outside the courthouse. You ready? I nodded. As I'll ever be. Inside the courtroom, Ethan looked completely different from the confident man who had once driven my Rolls-Royce through Miami pretending it belonged to him. He had lost weight. His expensive tailored suits were gone. Instead, he wore a plain navy jacket that looked several years old. He never looked in my direction. Ashley sat beside her attorney. She looked polished as always, but the confidence she once carried had disappeared. She kept her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. Not once did she look toward me. The proceedings lasted nearly 3 hours. Sophia presented the evidence methodically. Every photograph, every repair estimate, every medical report, every surveillance recording, every social media post. The judge watched everything carefully. The courtroom remained silent as footage from the villa played on the large screen. Ashley slapping me. Her friends laughing. The attack. The shattered pendant scattering across the marble floor. No one spoke while the video played. No one needed to. The evidence spoke for itself. When it was Ethan's turn to testify, he stood slowly and walked to the witness stand. He looked exhausted. His attorney asked the first question. Did you tell Ashley that you own Blue Horizon Capital? Yes. Did you tell her the Rolls-Royce belonged to you? Yes. Did you tell her the Palm Island villa was your home? Yes. Every answer came quietly, without excuses, without hesitation. Sophia stood for cross-examination. Mr. Brooks, did Ms. Carter ever authorize you to represent yourself as CEO? No. Did she ever give you permission to use her home for private gatherings? No. Did she ever allow your girlfriend or her friends to stay there? No. Were you aware that Ms. Carter believed the property was vacant that weekend? Yes. Sophia paused before asking the final question. When Ms. Monroe destroyed the pendant, did you attempt to stop her? The courtroom became completely silent. Ethan lowered his head. No. Sophia simply nodded. No further questions. Ashley testified later that afternoon. Her strategy was very different. She admitted that Ethan had lied to her. She admitted she believed he was wealthy. She admitted she thought I worked for him. Then she tried to justify her actions. I never would have behaved that way if I'd known she was the owner. Sophia stood immediately. Ms. Monroe, are you saying it would have been acceptable if Ms. Carter had been an ordinary employee? Ashley froze. You slapped a woman. You ordered others to assault her. You destroyed property that did not belong to you. Sophia's voice remained calm. Which of those actions would have been acceptable under different circumstances? Ashley couldn't answer. She stared down at the witness stand. For nearly 20 seconds. The courtroom was completely silent. Finally she whispered. None of them. Sophia nodded once. No further questions. The truth at last required no further explanation. The judge recessed the hearing for lunch before returning to deliver the decision later that afternoon. The courtroom was silent as everyone took their seats once again. The judge adjusted a stack of documents, glanced across the room, and began reading. The evidence presented in this matter is overwhelming. His voice was calm and measured. Video surveillance, medical documentation, witness testimony, digital records, and the defendant's own public statements establish a clear sequence of events. He paused. There is no reasonable dispute regarding the unauthorized occupation of the plaintiff's residence. Another page turned. Nor is there any dispute regarding the intentional destruction of personal property. I remained expressionless. Across the courtroom, Ashley slowly lowered her head. The judge continued. The court further finds that the physical assault against Ms. Megan Carter was both deliberate and unjustified. The participation of multiple individuals has been thoroughly documented. Every word echoed through the silent courtroom. The financial judgment took nearly 20 minutes to read. Property damage, medical expenses, replacement of damaged furnishings, restoration costs, professional cleaning, legal fees, compensation for unauthorized use of company assets. Each figure was carefully explained. Then came the final section. The court recognizes that the jade pendant destroyed during this incident possessed extraordinary sentimental significance. No monetary award can truly replace such an item. However, the intentional destruction of an irreplaceable family heirloom warrants additional damages. For the first time that day, I closed my eyes. Not because of the money, because someone had finally acknowledged what that pendant truly represented. The judge looked toward Ethan. Mr. Brooks, you abused the trust placed in you by your employer. You repeatedly misrepresented your position. You unlawfully used company property for personal gain. Your actions directly enabled every event that followed. Ethan quietly nodded. I understand, Your Honor. Then the judge turned toward Ashley. Ms. Monroe, being deceived does not excuse assault. It does not excuse vandalism. And it certainly does not excuse encouraging others to participate in violence. Ashley wiped away tears. Yes, Your Honor. Several of Ashley's friends received separate judgments based on their involvement in the attack. The security footage had identified exactly who struck me, who kicked me, who attempted to restrain me, and who merely stood by. Each person faced consequences according to their actions. No one escaped responsibility simply by claiming they had followed the crowd. Outside the courthouse, reporters immediately surrounded both legal teams. Microphones stretched toward me from every direction. Ms. Carter, do you have any comment on today's verdict? Do you feel justice was served? I stopped for only a moment, then answered simply. This case was never about wealth. It was about honesty. I looked briefly toward the courthouse doors. People make mistakes. But every mistake is followed by a choice. You can tell the truth, or you can build another lie. The first lie is usually the easiest. It's every lie after that which destroys a life. With that, I thanked the reporters and walked toward the waiting car. Daniel opened the rear passenger door. This time, the front passenger seat was empty, exactly as it should have been. The headlines faded after a few weeks, as they always do. A newer scandal replaced the old one. Another public figure. Another controversy. Another story for people to discuss over coffee before moving on with their lives. But for the people involved, life didn't simply return to normal. Blue Horizon Capital recovered quickly. Clients appreciated the company's transparency. Several investors even contacted our board personally, not to question my leadership, but to commend how professionally the situation had been handled. One longtime investor smiled during a quarterly meeting. You know, I've invested with a lot of companies over the years. It's easy to lead when everything goes well. The real test is how a CEO responds when everything goes wrong. I thanked him, quietly. Then we moved on to business. Daniel remained exactly as he had always been. Professional. Reliable. Never dramatic. One afternoon, while driving back from a board meeting in Coral Gables, he glanced at me through the rearview mirror. You seem different. I looked out the window. In what way? You trust people less. I thought about that for several seconds, then shook my head. No. I just choose more carefully. He smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. A month later, my jeweler called. The pendant is finished. I drove to his workshop myself. He carefully placed a small velvet box on the counter. Inside rested a delicate white gold necklace. The original pendant could never be restored. Instead, each fragment of my mother's jade had been suspended inside a handcrafted crystal medallion. Nothing had been hidden. Every crack remained visible. Every piece stayed exactly where it had fallen. Broken, yet preserved. The jeweler looked at me. I considered polishing the fragments. I gently shook my head. No. They're supposed to look exactly like this. He smiled softly. I thought you might say that. I fastened the necklace around my neck. The weight felt different. Lighter than before. But somehow, more meaningful. The jade wasn't pretending to be whole anymore. Neither was I. Several weeks later, I received another phone call. It was Robert Brooks. Ms. Carter, I wanted you to know my doctors say the treatment is working. I'm very glad to hear that. He hesitated. I also wanted to thank you. For what? I found out you've continued covering part of my medical treatment through the company's Retired Employee Assistance Program. I smiled. You earned that benefit long before any of this happened. His voice became quiet. I'll never forget your kindness. You don't owe me anything. No. Iraplia. But you spent years proving that integrity matters. I simply remembered. Neither of us mentioned Ethan. There was nothing left to say. Life slowly settled into a new routine. Every morning, a different driver arrived precisely on time. The car was always clean. The route never changed. No unnecessary detours. No unexpected passengers. No excuses. Just quiet professionalism. One Monday morning, the new driver handed me a cup of black coffee before pulling away from the curb. Good morning, Ms. Carter. Good morning. That was the entire conversation. Some people mistake silence for awkwardness. I don't. Sometimes. Silence is simply another word for trust. As Miami's skyline reflected across Biscayne Bay, I rested my hand against the crystal pendant hanging around my neck. The jade inside was no longer whole. Neither was the chapter of my life that had ended. But both remained strong enough to carry forward. Because in the end, character isn't revealed by success. It's revealed by what remains after every illusion has been stripped away. And that was a lesson none of us would ever forget. Nearly a year passed. The legal cases were over. The media had moved on. The headlines disappeared. But every now and then, someone would still recognize me at a conference or charity event. They would hesitate for a moment before asking the same question. If you could go back, would you still hire Ethan? For a long time, I didn't know how to answer. Eventually, I realized I did. Yes. The people asking usually look surprised. I would explain. I don't regret giving someone an opportunity. I regret that he wasted it. There is an important difference. If we stop believing people deserve a first chance, we eventually stop believing in people altogether. What matters is recognizing when that first chance becomes the last. Blue Horizon Capital continued to grow. We expanded into new markets across Florida, and eventually opened offices in Atlanta and Dallas. Business was stronger than ever. But one policy quietly changed after everything that happened. Every executive residence owned by the company received upgraded security systems. Vehicle access became fully digital. Every trip was logged automatically. Every employee completed additional ethics and trust training. Some board members joked that Ethan had accidentally improved the company. Perhaps they were right. Good organizations learn from bad experiences. Great organizations make sure they never happen twice. One Saturday afternoon I returned to the Palm Island villa. For the first time since the incident, the damaged furniture had been replaced. Fresh white orchids stood where broken bottles once covered the tables. The leather sofa looked brand new. The walls had been repainted. There wasn't a single trace of what had happened. Except one. Near the living room fireplace, a tiny scratch remained in the marble. The restoration team had offered to remove it. I told them not to. Not because I enjoyed remembering, but because pretending difficult moments never happened doesn't erase them. Sometimes, a scar is simply proof that healing took place. As the sun began setting over Biscayne Bay, I walked onto the terrace carrying a cup of coffee. The ocean breeze gently moved my hair. I reached up and touched the crystal pendant resting against my collarbone. The jade fragments shimmered inside the glass. Still broken. Still beautiful. Still carrying the same meaning. I smiled. Not because everything had turned out perfectly. It hadn't. Some losses never disappear. Some memories never completely fade. But neither do the lessons they leave behind. I looked across the water as the lights of Miami slowly came alive. People often believe success is measured by luxury cars, oceanfront homes, or impressive job titles. I know better now. Real success is waking up each morning knowing you never had to pretend to be someone else. Because borrowed lives always come with an expiration date. The truth may arrive slowly, but it always arrives. And when it does, the only thing left standing is character. I turned toward the house and quietly walked inside. The front passenger seat of the Rolls-Royce waiting outside remained empty, just as it had every morning since that day. And for the first time in a long while, it felt exactly right.